Hello, welcome. My name is Emmanuel Nava and I work for the Castro Valley Sanitary District, or CVSAN as we're known. CVSAN is a local public agency committed to providing safe, efficient, and effective zero waste and wastewater services. Thank you for joining us today for the bicycle repair virtual discussion. I'm excited for you to meet our speaker, Tommy, and to hear about your bicycle issues so that we can help you troubleshoot. First, I will review a few things about today's webinar experience and tell you a little bit about CVSAN before Tommy gives us a presentation on flat tire repair. At CVSAN, we're responsible for two main things in Castro Valley. The first is wastewater collection, which means all the water that we make dirty through sinks, showers, and toilets in Castro Valley. We handle wastewater collection and the maintenance of infrastructure so that all the wastewater collected in Castro Valley gets conveyed to the treatment plant at the Oro Loma Sanitary District. The second is the management of waste, and I work in the zero waste department. So what does zero waste mean for CVSAN? So since this is Zero Waste Week, I think it's important for us to define zero waste. So zero waste is, it means designing and managing products and processes to avoid and eliminate the volume and toxicity of waste and materials, conserve and recover all resources, and not burn or bury them. So that translates to our department working with residents, schools, businesses, on the ways that we can practice the 4 R's of reduce, reuse, recycle, and rot, and find our paths to zero waste. CVSAN even has a goal of zero waste by the year 2029, which requires everyone to pitch in. And that brings us back to this discussion. We are all here because we recognize our responsibility to reduce our consumption and conserve resources so that we can protect our health and environment. Wasted materials not only fill up our landfills, but food scraps and other organic materials in landfills release methane gas, which contributes to climate change. Not to mention the wasted energy, water, and materials when we throw something away instead of reusing or repairing. The embedded energy in products, meaning the energy and resources we use to create a product, is something that we don't always think about, but is so important for addressing climate change. We can reduce our impact by reusing what we already have and repair broken items. I hope that today's discussion will inspire you to take on your own repairs, especially when it comes to your bike. So with that, I'd like to introduce our guest, Tommy Bensko. Tommy believes cycling is for riders of all ages, cultures, and abilities, not just competitive bikers in spandex. He started the Bikemobile to help people who don't have access to bike repair due to financial and geographical limitations. The Bikemobile hosts bicycle repair clinics at schools and community events across the San Francisco Bay Area. At these events, their team engages people in a hands-on repair process, so that participants may become more confident making future repairs on their own. Finally, we also wanted to mention that this Bikemobile presentation is sponsored by the Alameda County Safe Routes to Schools program. With that, I'll hand it over to Tommy.
Great. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. Happy to be here. So my name's Tommy, and I coordinate a program called the Bikemobile. And yeah, like Emmanuel was saying, we go all over the Bay Area and teach bike repair and help people fix their bikes. And so today we're going to talk all about how to change a flat tire. I'm going to do it here in front of you. And if you have one at home and you want to do it with me, I encourage you to do that. So if you want to go grab your bike real quick and come back, that'll be fine. I think of flat tires as kind of like the common cold of biking. They happen, usually about once or twice a year. They're pretty annoying when they happen, but it is kind of just a fact of life. And so I think for a lot of us, they can be a hurdle. I know I didn't learn how to change a flat tire till I was an adult. And because of that, when I was a kid, I had multiple bikes that got flat tires, and then they just sort of sat there with a flat tire for months, sometimes longer. So it's just a really great skill to know how to use. It's a real confidence booster. And it's really not so hard once you get the hang of it. So I have a few things here. I have a pump. This is a definite necessity. Okay. And then I have a spare tube and then a patch kit. okay? And you only really need one or the other, but it's helpful to have both just in case. And then I have also a tire lever, and this is only a couple dollars. This is really helpful for getting tires off of rims. It's not necessary if you have a mountain bike, but it's really helpful if you have like a road bike or something with a skinny tire. So let's go ahead and start. And if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat, and Purvi will sort of ask them on your behalf. So if there's something like before, that's you don't really quite understand, go ahead and ask it before I move on, and then we can stop while we're in the process and address it. So I'm going to go ahead and tilt my camera down a little bit so you can see better, scoot back. Great, so here is my wheel. So if you get a flat tire, what you want to do is you want to just flip your bike upside down, take the wheel off your bike. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and just assume you've got the wheel off your bike and you're ready to fix your flat. Okay, so the next step then is going to be remove your tire from the rim. Okay, now this is kind of a bigger tire, so I don't really need to use this tire lever right here, but I'm going to go ahead and just use it just to sort of show you what it looks like when you do use one. Okay, so you're going to take this sort of scooped tip right here and then put it under the edge of this tire. Okay, kind of pry the tire off the rim like that, and then slide this tire lever around the edge of the rim until the tire sort of pops off just like that. Okay, great. So now the tire is off the rim on this side, okay, but it's still on the rim on this side. So this side's on and this side is off, okay? Now, if you take your hand, you should be able to sort of wiggle the whole tire off the rim, kind of like this, okay? And just separate them like so. Great, so we're gonna put the rim aside. And now, we're gonna take the inner tube out of the tire. So I'm just gonna grab the tube like here and start pulling it out of the inside of the tire. And you can see this thing looks kind of like a pepperoni pizza, right? Because it's got a bunch of patches already on it. Today, we're gonna add one more. All right, so now we're gonna put the tire aside too. And we'll just have the tube left over. Okay, so now if we wanna just replace the tube, we would just take our spare tube and put that in, right? But today I'm gonna show you how to patch the tube because it's just good to know and it can save you money. A spare tube costs about $5, maybe $6 now. Whereas to patch a tube, it really only costs about 50 cents because there's about 10 patches per patch kit, and the patch kit itself is about $5 too. So this is way more economical if you're trying to save some money. Inside of the patch kit are patches, some glue, and also some, what do they call that? Sandpaper, which is a weird thing to include, but I'll explain that in a moment. All right, so now we've got the tube off, okay, and it's kind of flat, right? Because it just went flat. Now we need to fix it. So the way that we're going to patch this is we have to figure out where the hole is first. So we're going to take our pump, okay? We're going to attach it to the tube. Okay, we're going to put it on the valve, and then we're going to start inflating it next. Whoops. Sometimes these pumps, there we go, that should do it. So I'm gonna go ahead and give it about maybe like 10 or 15 pumps. Okay, great. Now it's gonna get even bigger when I do this than it would inside of the tire, right? Because the tire actually holds its shape, and without the tire, it is free to get even bigger than it would be if it was inside the tire. Okay, so now we got this big tube, it kind of bulges in certain points, right? You can kind of see that. And now I'm just gonna just listen to see if I can find the hole. And what I'm listening for is a hiss, okay? And what it's gonna sound like is it's gonna sound like this, right? It's gonna sound like air escaping. And you'll be able to feel it on your cheek a little bit too when you find it, okay? And most of the time you'll be able to find it this way. If you can't find it this way, it means that you might have just a super, super small leak. And if you can't find it like this, what you can do is you can take your tube like this, you could put it in like your bathtub or in a bucket of water, and you'll see the bubbles come up, okay? But those are for just the hardest to find leaks. Most of the time you find it like this just fine. Okay, great. So, so we found the leak, and now, if you have something like a marker or a pencil, what I recommend is actually marking the area where you found the leak. Okay, so here it is right here. Okay, so I'm just going to just circle that, and that way it's easy to come back to later. Okay, you don't have to do that. It is kind of helpful. Okay, so the next step is, in order to patch this, we need to deflate it again, right? We don't want to put a patch on it while it's full of air. It just won't stick as well. So what I'm doing is I'm deflating it by using my fingernail or really any object and pushing it inside of the valve like this. And this will slowly let the air release from your tube. Great. Okay, so now it's flat again. Okay, nice and floppy. Great. Okay, so it's time to open up that patch kit and start patching the tube. So the first thing we're going to start with is actually, it's not the glue. Okay, this is the glue. The first thing we're going to start with is that piece of sandpaper. Okay, now when I first started patching my own tubes, I messed up a ton of times because I didn't read the instructions on the inside of the patch kit. And I was like, well, what is this sandpaper about? And I would just take it and I'd throw it in the garbage. Okay, the sandpaper is actually quite important. Sandpaper is responsible for, now see, that's why I marked this up, because it's easy to forget where it is. Where did it go? The sandpaper cleans the surface of the tire. Okay, so it acts almost just like kind of like a Brillo pad. And so what you do is you take that sandpaper and you sort of rub the surface of the tire like this. You get all the dirt and the grime off the tire, and you're also kind of creating a little extra surface area for the patch to stick to. Great. Okay, so nice and clean. Now the next step is to put some glue on the area. Okay, now this isn't normal glue. This is glue is a little different. So I'm gonna apply it, and instead of putting the patch on while the glue is wet, I'm actually going to wait for the glue to dry. Sorry, it's a little hard to see because the tube's so dark. I'm going to wait for the glue to dry, and then I'm going to put the patch on. Okay, we're going to go ahead and put that on there. Okay, nice big spot. You want to make sure to put enough glue so that it covers the entirety of the patch. If you don't put enough, big enough area of glue, then the edge of the patch won't stick very well, and it'll kind of start to peel off. Okay, great. So I got a lot of glue on there. And here's the thing, it is wet still, and I want it to be dry before I put the patch on. So I'm going to put this aside for a second. And while I'm waiting for this to dry, I'm going to do a couple things. First, I'm going to look for what may have caused the puncture to begin with, because if there's something sharp still in the tire, then it might cause the tube to go flat again as soon as we put it back in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the tire, okay, and I'm going to put my fingers inside of it gently. I'm going to feel inside like this, okay? And oftentimes, I'd say about half the time, I find like a thumbtack or a staple or something like a piece of wire that's sharp, and I just pull it out, okay? But about half the time, I never find anything, and it's just a mystery, and that's just the way it goes. I'd say half the time, whatever caused the flat tire already fell out and is gone. Okay, so I didn't find anything this time. And the other place I'm going to check before we move on is I'm going to check the rim, because sometimes there's sharp things in the rim that can cause a flat tire too. And usually what that is there's the other side of the spokes right here are actually quite sharp, and we've got them covered up with what's called rim tape right here, or a rim strip. So you can see the silver right there. Those nipples, spoke nipples, are actually really sharp, and if they're not covered up properly, then those can cause a flat tire too. So check your rim and check your tire before putting everything back together. Great. Now, we're just going to let that glue set for about 1 more minute. And while we let it set, I'm going to sort of talk about some of the different types of punctured tubes. Okay, so there's some that you can patch and there's some that you can't patch. So let's talk about some of the ones that you can't patch. So here's an example of one right here. Okay, there's a hole and it's right below the stem. Okay, that means this can't be patched because it's impossible for a patch to stick to the stem right here. So this is a replacement. All right, and then here is what's called a blowout. This is a big hole, right, that blew out the side of the tire. This has to be replaced too because it's just too big of a hole to patch. And then this one right here is kind of like, it's a manufacturing defect, right? Also too, this is what it looks like when somebody overinflates a tube, and it usually bursts at the seam right here in a straight line, too big to patch. So that has to be replaced. Luckily, all 3 of these are very rare. So it's not likely that this will happen to you. The most common is just the single puncture, okay? And that's what like comes from a nail or a staple or something like that. And that just looks like this, just one little hole, right? That is easy to patch. And the second most common is also possible to patch. And that's actually called a snake bite. And that's when you have 2 holes side by side, just like that, okay? And it looks like a snake bite. And this comes from not having enough air inside of your tube. And if you're riding around on a tire that doesn't have enough air in it, then you go over a bump or over a pothole, and actually it's sort of it's a weird thing. It actually pinches. It's called a pinch flat or a snake bite. It pinches your tube against your tire, against your rim, and it creates 2 little holes. So there's no sharp object. It was really just going over a pothole with a low tire that causes this one. Good thing is both of those can be patched. Okay, so now we've got our tube. The glue is mostly dry, okay? Now it's time to put a patch on it. So let me grab my patch, pull it out of my kit. And here's the thing. When you get ready to apply this patch, you want to be quite careful. You want to peel it off. Be careful not to touch the underside of the patch, okay? You don't want to touch the underside because it's clean. If you put your greasy hands on it, it won't stick to the tube very well. Okay, so we're going to go ahead now, apply the patch right here, okay? And then the next part is we really want to smash that patch on the tube. Okay, so I'm going to use my thumbnail and really use my thumbnail to really get the edges nice and flattened down against the tube. Okay, just like that. Great. Okay, fantastic. All right, so that's pretty good. This plastic, you can peel it off. I like to just leave it on there because sometimes peeling it off actually peels the patch back off the tube, and it's not going to hurt anything if you just leave it on there. Great. Okay. Well, I think, okay, now our patch is on there. And now some people like to go ahead and put air in the tube to test it while it's outside of the tire. I actually like to go ahead and just put it in everything back together and then blow it up before the wheel is put back on the bike. So what I mean by that is to go ahead and start reassembling things. So I'm going to take my wheel right here, okay? And then I'm going to take the tire, and then I'm going to start putting these back together, okay? And the way I like to do that is not even with the tube first. I like to put the tire on the rim without the tube, okay? So I'm just going to take this, and it's a little tricky, but I just like to put the tire on the rim one side at a time, okay? Just like this, to where this side of the tire is off and this side is on. You can see this side's on the rim and this side's off the rim, okay? Great. All right, so now that leaves us room for putting the tube inside the tire right here. So I'm going to start by grabbing the tube at the valve. okay? Because that's where we're gonna place the tube first, is by the valve. We're gonna find the valve in the rim, okay? So the valve hole is right here. You can't really see it very well, but it's right there. Okay, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this part of the tire, right, that's off the rim, and I'm actually gonna sort of push it back a little bit, and then take this valve stem, right, and poke it through that hole. And you can kind of see it pop through right here, like that. Perfect. Okay. Now I'm going to take the tire and I'm going to fold it over the tube. Boom, just like that. Okay, and now it's time to start stuffing the tube inside of the tire. You might be wondering, how many times can you patch a tire? Because this tire has been probably patched about 20 times. You can probably patch one 40 to 50 times, really. There's no limit. Okay, and I'm just going to go ahead and continue stuffing this tube inside of the tire, just like that. Great. Awesome. Okay, so we're not done yet, but we're close. Right, so we've got the tube inside the tire, and now it's time to put the tire back on the rim fully, right? Because we've got this side still off the rim, and this side is on the rim right here. Great. Okay, so some of you can just do this with your hands with no tools, okay? Some of you might want to use a tire lever, right? Remember when we use this to take the tire off to begin with? Okay, so the way to use this, if you want to use this, is to take the scooped edge, okay, pop it in here like this, and then go around the edge of the tire like this, all the way around the edge of the tire. And that's really good for, especially if you have road bikes, because it can be hard to put a road bike tire back on a rim, okay? But if you have a mountain bike or kind of just like a fat tire hybrid, you probably won't really need one of these. And I'll just demonstrate, I'll just do it by hand. I'll take it back off and I'll show you what it looks like when I do it without the tire lever. Great, great, so tire levers, okay, so the tire's back off the rim. Now, if I do it without the tire lever, this is what I do. I take my thumbs and I put them behind the tire, okay? And I use my fingers to push this side of the tire back onto the rim, like this. I just sort of work my way around, just like this, all the way around the rim. And then the last part, sort of the last section right here, can be a little bit tricky. So you might have to just use like a little bit of extra muscle to get that part of the tire back on the rim. This one, it's really not hard at all. But if you have like skinny road bike tires, that's when it starts getting a little bit harder. Okay, great. So we've got everything back together. And now it's time to just inflate the tube. Now, this is when I like to inflate it. Some people put it back on, they put it back in their bike first before they inflate it. I like to go ahead and inflate it now. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay. And here's the thing. If you have a hand pump like this, there's no gauge on it, usually. Very rarely do they come with gauges. So how do you tell when your tire has enough air in it? Well, I use the squeeze method. And right now it's obviously super squishy, right? Because I haven't put any air in it, but it should feel rock hard. So after about maybe like 20 pumps or so, I'm gonna give it another squeeze. And if it feels soft like an orange, then it's probably too soft. I need to add some extra air. But if it starts feeling hard, like rock hard, or like, you know, about it's probably good. It should really, a lot of people think the tire should be like a little squishy. It should really actually be quite firm. It should not easily be able to squish a tire. Great. Okay. And let's see, I'm gonna give it a squeeze. Yeah, I can still squeeze it a little bit, okay? So I could probably ride on this okay, but it's not really as full as it should be. So I'm going to give it a few more pumps. All right, awesome. Yeah, now I can't squeeze it. Perfect. Okay, now it's ready to be to go back on the bike. Excellent. There we go. Easy as pie. Okay. Do we have any questions so far? Anybody anybody confused or just have any advice of their own? Maybe you have some tips that I didn't even know of.
Yeah, so I'll wait for some questions to come into the chat, but I was going to ask you, Tommy, do you need a special tool to put the tire off and off of the bike?
Yeah, good question. So this particular wheel is a bolt-on wheel. Some of them, there's two ways that wheels attach. One is a bolt like this. And so this bolt-on wheel requires a pretty common wrench like this. This is a 15mm wrench. And almost all bolt-on wheels require the same size 15mm wrench or an adjustable wrench. All right, and so this is how you would take your wheel on and off, okay? But there's another attachment method, and that's called a quick release wheel. And instead of using this wrench, I've got an axle here. This goes through the wheel, okay? And in order to take the wheel off, you just open this lever like this with your hand. So it makes it super convenient for taking your wheel on and off your bike. You just open this lever and you take the wheel off your bike. But here's the thing, if you have one of these, it also makes it super easy for someone to steal your wheels too. So if you do have this type of axle, then you wanna just take an extra precaution and lock your front wheel and your back wheel, because either one can be stolen within about 5 seconds if you have this type of attachment. So it's a good thing to know about your bike. Great, good question.
Related
All
to
right.
that, Tommy, I wanted to ask another question.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can be a little tricky to remove your rear tire from the bike because it's connected to the chain. Do you have any tips on how to wriggle it off back?
Yeah, I can actually show you on my bike. My bike is just right over here, and I can pull it over and I can do a demonstration so you can see. There is a trick to it. Let's. Okay. All right. Okay, so let me get my camera situated better. Great. Okay, so here, like I was saying, if you want to take your wheel off, you really want to flip your bike upside down, okay? And then in this particular case, my bike is a quick release, so I don't need any special tools. There's just a lever on the side. I'm going to pop that lever open, okay? And then here's the trick. This is what's called a rear derailleur, and this is what typically gets in the way. So what you're going to do is you're going to grab the rear derailleur. This is kind of like the elbow of the rear derailleur. You're going to grab the elbow and pull back, and it's going to open up the space right here, right? And by doing so, you can then really just take your wheel and pull it up and out, okay? And then you can let go of this derailleur. Now, putting it back in is pretty much the same thing in reverse, okay? And I'll show you also up close before I put it back in. This is what that quick release lever looks like, okay? So instead of needing a wrench, you just pop this lever open. Okay, so now it's time to let's say we want to put it back in. It's kind of the same thing in reverse. We take this with one hand, kind of push forward with one hand and pull back with the other one. Okay, and that creates an opening right here. And that's where we then put the gears right inside that opening. Okay, and then we just drop the wheel back into the frame, just like that. Okay, and you just want to make sure that you retighten that quick release, because if you leave that open, then your wheel might fall off. Great, that's it.
So how can we tell if your tire is old and needs to be replaced?
Yeah, so there's a couple ways. One way is if you start getting a lot of flat tires, and it means that one thing that could mean is that your tire is wearing thin and sharper things are having an easier time puncturing your tire. You can tell sometimes just by looking at the tread. So for example, this one, yes, that is a 5.25 floppy disk. Good, good eye. So you can tell by looking at the tread and see if the tread is looking worn down, then it means that it's probably worn out. Another thing you can do is you can look at the sides of the tire, and if it's cracks start developing along the sides of your tires, then it means they're starting to get dry rot and it's time to replace them there too. But the most common one really is just the tread wearing down right here. And that just means that you won't have as much grip, and also it means you'll just get more flat tires from sharp things puncturing through. Great question.
Annie asks, how often should I clean my chain?
Okay, so it really kind of depends on how often you ride, right? And in what kind of weather you're riding in. So if you are riding like every day, then I would say you probably want to try to clean your chain about once a month or so if you're riding, just around the city. Now, if you're riding off-road and you're getting it all dirty and muddy, then it's actually important to clean it much more frequently. But yeah, for just casual riding around the city, about once a month. And you can, there are chain cleaning devices. You can also, you can just you can add oil to it, and is maybe just, you don't have to clean it like every time you put oil on it, but maybe every at least a couple times a year for casual riding, it's good to clean your chain.
Thank you. So Sean is asking, where is the best place to get a new tire?
Ah, right. It really, it just depends on your preferences. Some people really like to shop online. I think it's great if you can develop a good relationship with your local bike shop. If you go into the bike shop and they're not friendly with you, then try a different bike shop. There's different ones out there. So yeah, having a good relationship with your bike shop is really great, because they can give you a lot of good advice. Yeah. Oh, I see there's another question from Steve about how to prevent flats in a tubeless tire. Well, yes, I actually just got a mountain bike earlier this year, and it has tubeless tires. What that means is there's no inner tubes like this. So kind of like vehicles, vehicles are tubeless. They don't use inner tubes. Sort of the same thing on modern mountain bikes now. And in that case, there is a gel that you have to sort of pour in the valve of your even though there's not a tube, there is a valve that is stuck in your rim, and so you would pour the gel into that valve and then spin your wheel around, and then that gel coats the inside of your tire, and then it's sort of like, it's a little bit like fix a flat or slime, if you're familiar with that. And then if you roll over a thorn or something, then that self seals itself. It self seals that hole. Yeah.
I just wanted to add real quick to the last question. I just did a quick Google search, and there's a few places in town: Castro Valley Cyclery, Eden Bicycles, and Area Cycles, which are local bike shops. So you could just pop in and take a look at their selection of items. And nearby, there's also Cycle Path Hayward. So you could take a look at those locations if you need a new tire or any other items for your bike.
And then does the gel need to be reapplied?
Yes, it does. So that's what I just ran into because I got a flat tire on my tubeless. And I think it's because it had been about a year since I first applied it. And so I think when I read the instructions, it said, yes, this needs to be applied, I think about every 6 months or so, maybe like between 6 months and a year. And then what I haven't done yet is I think you're supposed to take your tire off and scrape out the old gel that's dried up. And I haven't done that yet myself, but that's what you're supposed to do.
Thank you. Another question is, if you store your bike outside and it gets rusty, do you have any tips for removing the rust?
Yeah. So depends on how rusty. If it's just a little rusty, then you can take a piece of Brillo and that will actually clean a lot of the rust off of like the chrome parts, like your handlebars, your seat post, things that are usually kind of shiny and most rusty. If you're looking at trying to sort of clean your chain after a long time outside, there's a couple of approaches. One is you could actually use WD-40 to kind of get most of the rust off, but you have to also then, once that dries, you have to do a coat of oil laterwards or afterwards. You don't want to just use WD-40. You always want to apply oil, right? And you don't really want to use WD-40 unless there's just a ton of rust buildup. So on a regular basis, you just use oil and not WD-40. And yeah, I think those are probably the best tips I can think of for getting rust off your bike after it's been outside for a while.
What kind of oil do we need to look for if we're going to one of our local shops?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I do recommend bike specific oil and not just like olive oil or coconut oil or something like that. And so it usually comes in a small bottle and it's usually about $5. And yeah, I would just recommend go to your local bike shop for that. Your hardware store probably has it too. But yeah, I just make sure that there is a big difference between different types of oils. Even motor oil for your car is not really ideal for biking.
Thank you. So how often should someone get a tune-up? Like, for example, if your chain is really loud, do you need to replace it or would the oil work?
Right. There's a few different reasons that your chain could be making noise. So that's hard to sort of give all the answers for that. But I would say, your bike really, it needs a tune-up whenever you really you think it does. If you want to be preventative and proactive, I would say like at least once a year is a good time to bring it in. But it really just depends on how much you ride it. So if you ride it every day, then yeah, probably twice a year. If you only ride it on the weekends, then once a year is probably plenty.
So Bike Mobile is the group that Tommy represents. And I just wanted to mention, we're really grateful to be working with Tommy. He partnered with us last year for Zero Waste Week. Hopefully some of you attended. And we were able to do this in person, and he and his team fixed bikes for folks in Castro Valley. So that was really wonderful. And it was in conjunction with our Fix It clinic. So that was really exciting. Yeah, so Bike Mobile, they provide free mobile bike repair when we're not in a pandemic. And I know they work with schools. So definitely get in touch if you are connected to your school or would like to see that at your children's school. It's a really great event, and they have really great, friendly staff. We really enjoyed working with them. Is there anything you wanted to add, Tommy?
Nope, that's a great description. Thank you.
Awesome, awesome. So in addition to that, we have Bike East Bay. And the mission of Bike East Bay is to promote healthy and sustainable communities by making bicycling safe, fun, and accessible. They sponsor and partner many events aimed at getting folks on their bikes and out of vehicles. And I've been to several of their events where they've been present also, where they've provided free bike valet service. And it's really great because you don't have to worry about bicycle theft. It's in a closed off area that they're monitoring. So it's really, really wonderful service that they provide at some of the events that they do. More importantly, however, they offer a ton of resources for all cyclists on their website. They provide free maps, free goodies at their Bike to Work Day events, and information on their website that I wanted to share with you today. So first, they have bike education classes. And so they have everything from urban cycling 101 for adults and teens, theft prevention courses, adult learn to ride classes, and they also offer family cycling workshops. So definitely check them out if you're interested in those areas. Also, they provide local options for bike maintenance and repair. And so I just wanted to highlight a few of those opportunities since we weren't able to get into more complex bike repairs and maintenance. We encourage you to research and learn more, but if you really want to just get it taken care of by a professional, there's opportunities nearby. In addition to the shops I mentioned in Castro Valley, in Dublin, there's some bike shops that you can take your bike to. Oakland has a ton of resources, the Bikery, the Crucible, Cycle Sports, and there's also these resources there's a tool lending library in Oakland. So I think you need a library card, but there might be ways to get one of those. And I also wanted to mention Spokeland. So Spokeland is located in West Oakland. They are focused on providing a safe and fun workspace for people of all ages, ethnicities, and cultures, genders, sexual orientations, and skill levels. And Spokeland offers a fully equipped do-it-yourself, do-it-together bike mechanics workshop and an inclusive culture and mechanical expertise. They offer bicycle tune-ups for a fee, and they also have a low-cost do-it-yourself shop hours. So they have a program called Wrench Together, which is an opportunity to observe and learn from the experience of their expert bike mechanics. So that's pretty awesome. And there's also Cycles of Change in East Oakland. So they opened the Bikery in 2009, which is a bike shop located in East Oakland. And they offer used bikes for sale, full service repairs, earn a bike programs for youth. And they also have Oakland Upcycle, which connects low-income East Bay residents with free bicycles each year. So participants get everything they need to start using the bicycle as their primary form of transportation. They get a lock, helmet, rack, and other essentials. They also receive a personalized transportation plan and urban riding training from Oakland Upcycle instructors. So lots of great resources out there. Definitely take a look at Bike East Bay. And finally, I wanted to just mention, even if you have a bike that is not working and you don't plan to fix it, you can donate it. There's a lot of organizations in the Bay Area that take bikes and they fix them up and then they redistribute them to folks in need. So I mentioned some organizations already, but I also wanted to highlight Bad Business Model Bikes, which is located in Castro Valley. One thing I will mention is definitely contact these businesses in advance as their hours may be affected due to the pandemic. So definitely keep that in mind. But Bad Business Model Bikes, they're a really great duo of Billy and Chris. And again, they were at our Fix It Clinic last year, also helping to repair bicycles with the Bike Mobile. And they normally don't fix bikes for the community. However, you can donate your old bikes to them for repair and redistribution to those looking for a bike, and it won't cost them anything. So they, worked with us for this event as a service, but typically they just take used bikes and then they repurpose them and provide them to other folks. And so I don't know if you caught that, but their tagline is $0 and no cents because they don't charge anything. So therefore the bad business model. So yeah, they're really great. Check them out. They're on Facebook. And let's see, I want to pause for a second and just again see if there's any questions in the Q&A for Tommy.
Yeah, so Annie is asking, do you have recommendations for bike fitting. How much should we pay for a bike fitting? How do I know if I need a bike fitting?
Yeah, great question. So bike fitting can be kind of expensive. People really who I think it costs at least about $100 usually to get a bike fit. Sometimes between 100 and 200. I've never had it done because of that expense, and also I think mostly people who professionally race will go through that process. But for more just kind of casual everyday riders, I don't think it makes sense. So it's really more of like a professional athlete kind of a move, because it is just not cheap, unfortunately. But what I would say is, if you're trying to just do it yourself at home, I would say the main adjustment is your seat height, and I would just play around with it. I would say try to raise your seat up. Most people have their seat a little too low. I would say try to raise your seat up a little bit, ride your bike at least a couple of times around the block to make sure that your body's had a chance to adjust, and then see if you like it or not. One good rule of thumb is you want to have your leg almost straight when you're sitting on your seat and you have your leg extended at the bottom of the pedal stroke. Most people have a really big bend in their knee. You just want to have like a 10-degree or slight bend in your knee when you're sitting on your seat and your leg is at the bottom of the pedal stroke. So that's the main one. But you can do all kinds of things with your handlebars and stem to get your handlebars up higher or lower. The lower your handlebars, the more aggressive and more control you're going to have over your bike. The higher the handlebars, it's going to be a little bit more comfortable, but you're not going to have as much control over cornering and turning and things like that. So it's a trade-off. I personally like my handlebars and my seat at about the same height. That's about where I put mine.
Thank you all for attending. Please connect with us on social media at CVSAN on Twitter and Facebook. We post a lot of helpful tips, recipes, and information on there every week. That's also where we promote events like this. And we hope to continue to offer events like this. And so after this session ends, there'll be a little 2-question survey. So if you could please fill that out and respond. We're just looking for feedback and ideas for future events. And yeah, we'd love to hear from the community. Thank you all. And if you have any questions for us, feel free to reach out to contact@cvsan.org. Thank you so much and have a nice day.